Hello everyone, it's 5th of April 2020. It's a Sunday. It's our day 1 of our U unit, which is Unit 16, Life in the Future. We will begin now with Lesson 1, talking about possibilities with the use of may. This is Miss Marlin, and I will guide you through the lesson. We are on Unit 16, Life in the Future, Lesson 1, talking about possibilities with the use of may. Please get ready with your pupil's book. Turn it to page 83 as well as your workbook. Open it to page 93. Here are the objectives for today's lesson. 1. Unlock the meaning of the words. 2. Recognize modal. For this lesson, it's may and its function. 3. Develop your speaking ability by reading the dialogue found in the pupil's book. Here are the new words that you will encounter for today's lesson. Number 1 is earth. 2. Million. 3. Crowded. 4. Future. 5. Space. Once more, please repeat after me. 1. Earth. 2. Million. 3. Crowded. 4. Future. 5. Space. Good job! First word is Earth. Earth is the planet on which we live in. As you can see from the two photos, the first one on your left is a picture of the solar system wherein Earth is the third planet from the Sun. The second photo on your right is a closer version, it's a closer picture of Earth. The next word is million. Million means the number equivalent to the product of 1,000 and 1,000. It also means the natural number following 999,999 and preceding 1,000,001. It also means the number from a million to a billion. Another word is crowded. Crowded means full of people, leaving little or no room for movement, or packed. The picture shows a crowded street. Another picture shows a crowded cafeteria. Next word is future. Future means a period of time following the moment of speaking or writing. It is also a time regarded as still to come. This is a picture of what a city may look like in the future. Next is the word space. Space means the dimension of height, depth, and width within which all things exist and move. Let's now move on to our discussion. So let's talk about modal verbs, and we will only focus on the modal verbs will and may. What is will and what is may? Will means something that is definitely going to happen, or you are definitely going to do something, or certain that is something happening in the future. May means that something might happen, or you might do something, or might not happen in the future. So in other words, when you use will, it means you are certain that things will happen. But if you use may, it means you are not sure. It may happen, it may not happen. Now, we talk about modal verbs in general. What are modal verbs? Modal verbs are a special kind of helping verb. It helps the main verb to express the mood of the subject, and at the same time, it can indicate possibility, persuasion, ability, and willingness. Examples of modal verbs are can, could, will, would, may, might, must, and should. a clear understanding of modal verbs and how to use them. So these modal verbs express ideas such as possibility, intention, obligation, and necessity. So these are different from the verbs that you know of. We learned before that verbs show movement, they show action, and they can be in the past, present, or future. But these modal verbs are totally different from the verbs that you know of. So these modal verbs do not change their form. As we all know, in action verbs, we change the spelling or their form if it's used in the past, in the present, and in the future. Next, modal verbs do not use an S for third person singular. Modal verbs have no infinitive or participle, either past or present. Modal verbs make questions by inversion. For example, he can go becomes can he go? And modal verbs are followed by the infinitive of another verb without to. So these are the differences between modal verbs and the regular action verbs that you know of. But in modal verbs, we will just focus on will and may. So I have just given you some examples of modal verbs. They are can, could, may, might, must, will, would, shall, should, and ought to. But in this lesson, we focus more on will and may. When and how do we use may? We use may if it's a request. For example, may I borrow your book? Or may I have the bill, please? We use may for permission. For example, all employees may take the day off. May I sit here? For a possibility. For example, it may snow tomorrow. She may be at home. So when you say possibility, something that is not certain. It's also used for prohibition, like, you may not smoke in my house. Also for a wish. For example, may all your dreams come true, or may you both be very happy. How do we use may in constructing a sentence? So for affirmative, it's subject first, plus may, and then the verb. For example, you as a subject, may, then go as the verb. You may go. For negative, it's subject, you, may not, and the verb go. So it will be you may not go. For interrogative, in question form, may you go? Or may I go? Next discussion is about the modal verb will. Now, when and how do we use will? For request, for example, will you lend me your book? Or will you help me file this paper? For refusal in negative form, I won't do your work. Or I won't share my potato chips with him. So won't and will not are just the same. For offer, I'll watch your children today, or I'll help you carry your groceries. I'll is just the same with I will. For conditional, if he asks me, I will help him. For future, we will visit Spain next month. So now we will learn how to construct modal verbs in a sentence. First, it's the subject, then the modal verb that to be used, followed by the main verb, or if you have a phrase, you put in the phrase. So for example, subject will be I or we, they, you, he, she, or it. Connected with a modal verb, which is must, can, should, may, or will, plus the main verb, go, or drink, or eat, and do, and the phrase, if you have the phrase. So for example, I must go to sleep. We can drink some water. They should eat some food. You may do some exercise. He will go to sleep. She will drink some water. It may eat some food. So remember, we use the basic form of the main verbs after the modal verb. Please open your pupil's book and turn to page 83. Kindly read along with me. Life in the future. Last week, the children went to the Science Museum. A scientist called Professor Moon talked to them. Professor Moon said, "This is the sky. Can you see the sun and our planet Earth?" 650 million people live on Earth now. But Earth may become too crowded. Then, what will we do? Today, people can live and work in space stations. In the future, we may build huge cities in space. Men have walked on the moon. In the future, we may travel to other planets. There may be life on other planets, but I don't think so. Now, let's answer this part. What do you think? Read and tick. If your answer is yes, you tick yes. If your answer is no, tick the box with no. Or if your answer is perhaps, tick the box under perhaps. Let's start. Number 1. Will Earth become too crowded? Yes, no, or perhaps. If your answer is yes, you have to say, yes, I think Earth will become too crowded. If your answer is no, you have to say, no, it won't become too crowded. And if your answer is perhaps, you have to say, perhaps it may become too crowded. Number 2, will we build cities in space? If your answer is yes, please say, yes, we will build cities in space. If your answer is no, you have to say, no, we won't build cities in space. If your answer is perhaps, you have to say, perhaps we may build cities in space. Number 3, question, will we travel to other planets? If your answer is yes, please say, yes, we will travel to other planets. If your answer is no, you say, no, we won't travel to other planets. And if your answer is perhaps, you have to say, perhaps we may travel to other planets. Number 4, question, is there life on other planets? If your answer is yes, please say, yes, there is life on other planets. If your answer is no, no, there is no life in other planets. If your answer is perhaps, please say, perhaps there may be life on other planets. Please open your workbook and turn to page 93. What will happen in the future? Let's answer the questions. Use the answers in the box. So you have to choose from yes, I will, perhaps I may, or no, I won't. Let's start. Number 1, will you go to the moon? No, I won't. Will you have a job? Yes, I will. Will you go to the university? Yes, I will. Will you travel around the world? Perhaps I may. Will you get married? Yes, I will. Will you have children? Yes, I will. Will you have lots of friends? Yes, I will. Will you live in a castle? No, I won't. So all of these answers presented to you are my own personal answers, but you can have your own answers. Just remember, start your answer with a capital letter and end it with a full stop. And if your answer is yes, add it with I will. If your answer is no, add it with I won't. And if your answer is perhaps, add it with I may. That ends our discussion for Unit 16, Lesson 1. Thank you for watching and listening. Unit 16, Lesson 2 will come up next. Wait for it.